agenda, from the economy to the border to everywhere in between. Watch.
You say, please, please, it's too much.
I'm a winner. I'm going to win.
That's my job. That's what I do.
It's just my nature.
Are you not entertained? I'm going to show you how great I am.
You play to win the game.
Here's the situation.
I'm the best there is, plain and simple.
You can't handle the truth. It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
That's how winning is done.
Not worth winning if you can't win.
That flipped this switch in me where I was like, okay, you, watch this.
The show goes on. What the?
Who do you think you are? I am.
Kind of a big deal.
Winning's winning.
Ben, Noggin.
Winners focus on winning.
My boy's wicked smart.
But of course, Democrats and their media allies would rather throw a fit about anything and everything the president is doing. They have no ideas or solutions. It's just Trump derangement syndrome day after day. Take a look.
Pictures of a raid that actually happened in Hollywood at a Home Depot, and it is hard for me to believe that that raid was consistent with the court order that said you cannot racially profile, you cannot racially discriminate. What I saw on the video, what I saw on the pictures that were sent to me looked like the same guys chasing people through a Home Depot.
And earlier, President Trump announced yet another major America First win. Watch.
You might show them a little bit about the product that you're going to be doing in Kentucky, Tim.
Absolutely. Do you mind if I step up?
Yes, please.
This bond was made in the U.S., California, and this glass comes on the Corning line. It's engraved for President Trump. It's a unique unit of one. It was designed by a U.S. Marine Corps corporal, a former one, that works at Apple now.
He's done well.
Designed it for you. And the base comes from Utah and is 24 karat gold, and it sits, I'll take the liberty of setting it up.
Wow.
Well, there we go. Congratulations,
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
President.
It's
Thank you so
fantastic.
much.
Great people of Kentucky. You're going to find it a great place to do business, too.
And much more coming up with Daily Signal producer Virginia Allen. But first, an important word from our sponsors for having the guts to support this program. And in the meantime, free speech is under attack, but Rumble refuses to back down. We have always believed in empowering independent voices, and now Rumble is taking it to the next level. We are excited to offer Rumble Premium, a completely ad-free experience with exclusive benefits for viewers and creators. And it's more than a subscription. It is a stand for free speech. Your voice matters. So join Rumble Premium. For a limited time, you can get $10 off an annual plan using promo code KG10. So just visit rumble.com/premium/KG10 and claim your discount today. Again, that's rumble.com/premium/KG10. Also, be sure to check out the good folks over at the 1775 Coffee Company. We talk about it all the time. Don't compromise on taste, quality, or your values. And 1775 coffee is brewed to perfection. It is crafted with precision and built on patriotism. The farm-to-cup process means there is quality, authenticity, and sustainability from start to finish. All the beans are ethically and exclusively single-sourced. So why not? Try 1775 coffee today. Go to 1775coffee.com/KG for 15% off your first order. Joining me now, Daily Signal news producer and host of Problematic Women, Virginia Allen. Thank you so much for being on the program. I'm really excited about your recent article on President Trump's foreign policy. It's of particular interest to me. And you explored the philosophy of peace through strength, which is a tenet of, President Trump's foreign policy stance and also from the State Department. As we look at the global landscape in August 2025 right now, with ongoing tensions in Eastern Europe, in the Indo-Pacific, and Latin America, how is it that America First doctrine, being tested, and where do you see its principles being most actively applied today?
Yeah, well, Kimberly, it's great to be with you. And my goodness, as you go through that list, it's like, where isn't there controversy in the world right now,
Yeah,
right?
take it step by step, because I think it's very fascinating, and our viewers and listeners want to know. This is important geopolitically.
It's very, very important. And President Trump has been so strategic about really addressing conflicts, whether it be in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East. And, it's interesting. And, as I was reporting on kind of the president's strategy around this, you have these two elements that maybe some people would see in tension, where you have a president who came into office, who campaigned on America first, on putting the priorities of our country back at number one, of ensuring that our economy is strong, our military is strong, and really that we have our house in order at home. And yet at the same time, we also see a president in President Trump who's very eager to get conflicts across the globe settled and to ensure that wars are ended before they even begin. And so, my question to so many experts was, okay, how do you kind of rationalize those two things? How do you put those two together? And both, in response from the White House and so many folks that have worked for the president at very high levels said, the president understands and sees and really believes that solving these crises and stopping wars, of course, that's going to be in America's interest to prevent the conflicts before they begin. That obviously not only helps national security, but even on the economic front can be very, very useful to ensuring the U.S. can continue to focus on economic growth at home and isn't pulled into conflicts overseas. And so it's really strategic what the president is doing. And in other words, what they were saying is these aren't distractions from America First policy. These are part of Trump's America First policy.
No, you're absolutely right. And I love the focus and looking at it through that lens of being very proactive, preventing these wars and conflicts from happening. And just as an aside, I really do firmly believe if President Trump had been in office and had been our commander in chief, the whole situation with Russia and Ukraine, I don't think would have materialized in the way that it did.
Well, and that was a question that, I posed to individuals who have worked for the president, people like Tim Murtaugh, worked on the president's communication team, and said, we have these situations that, Trump campaigned on ending the war in Russia and Ukraine. And they said, yes, and the president is still eager to find resolve, to find the solution to these conflicts and to be a part of creating that peace. And like you said, they really hold to the fact that these conflicts would not have started in the first place if Trump was in office. And we've seen Trump's frustration, first really with Zelensky and now with Putin, even some frustration, of course, continued frustration with Hamas in the Middle East and that prolonged conflict. And so, these are situations that I think have proven to be even more difficult maybe than the president anticipated ending. And yet Trump really remains resolved that both for these nations and for the world, but also in America's interest, these are conflicts that must end and must end soon.
Yeah. And, I want to talk about some other reporting that you did. You just reported on the New Mexico governor's push to ban ICE detention centers. This is very interesting. It seems to be part of a larger coordinated effort by some states to challenge federal immigration enforcement. How does this specific state level action impact the broader crisis at the southern border?
Well, it makes it incredibly challenging for the federal government, for ICE officials to do their job when obviously they're going to be facing opposition from the cartels. But then when you throw in state and local governments opposing them, it really begs the question, okay, who's being supported here? And, what is really the objective for these far left states, cities, communities that are doing things like what we're seeing in New Mexico, where the governor has said very, very openly that she is likely to call a special session before the end of this year. And included on that roster, under consideration for the special session, is legislation that would ban federal immigration detention centers within the state. There's 3 in the state right now. So anytime ICE officers, ICE agents make arrests, they need to have a place to put those individuals, somewhere that's safe, where they can have meals provided for. And so there's both now on the state level, within the state legislature of New Mexico, there's both Republicans and Democrats who are saying, wait, this doesn't really make any sense. I spoke with one state senator, Cervantes, and he said, it doesn't make sense, even though he in so many ways opposes what Trump is doing on the immigration front. He says it doesn't make sense for us to remove these detention centers from our state where we can at least have influence on the way that these individuals are being treated in detention facilities. If we remove these facilities and shut them down in the state, then they're just gonna be moved. He's very honest. He's like, ICE is still gonna make the arrest. They're just gonna then make the arrest in New Mexico, and these people are gonna go to California or Texas or wherever, where lawmakers
path
have
of
no
least
control.
Resistance. That's where water will go, and that's where illegal immigrants will go as well. So this is something very disturbing to me. The Trump administration located 13,000 unaccompanied minors. I mean, God bless, this breaks my heart. And connecting it to your recent reporting on New Mexico, we're seeing two very different approaches to immigration enforcement and humanitarian concerns compared to the last administration. What is the latest?
Yeah, this is really critical. My colleague, White House correspondent Elizabeth Mitchell, had a great story out in the Daily Signal this morning, shedding a light on really the strategic effort that the Trump administration has taken to find these literally hundreds of thousands of children that crossed the border under the Biden administration, and then were paroled to individuals who were apparently vetted, but were not vetted well at all. Many of them themselves, the sponsors that hosted these kids, were illegal aliens themselves, were not in the U.S. lawfully. We know from various reporting and testimony before Congress that these kids, listed addresses that weren't even real addresses, that were, warehouses. And so then the question obviously becomes, what happened to these children? Are they being trafficked? Are they in danger? Are they in forced labor situations? And because of so much excellent reporting, even great reporting out of the New York Times on this issue, has really shed a light on, many of these kids are in dire straits. Terrible. And there needs to be action taken. And we did not see action taken under the Biden administration, but now the Trump administration is going out and finding these kids and pledging to return them home.
Okay, well, it's very important. It's crucial. It's just so sad having, been a former prosecutor and focusing on, crimes as well against children, child abuse, sex trafficking, all of the above. It is so horrific. And imagine if it was happening to your child. I mean, it's just like, that's how much each one of us should care about it as American citizens and do something about it. And I'm so proud of the Trump administration for doing just that. And let's talk a little bit more broadly on the political front. We're seeing stark polling shifts in favor of mass deportations. And even other recent polling is showing a stark shift among Gen Z to the right, including young women. What do you think is driving this shift?
I think it's that the left has overplayed their hand.
Yeah.
For so long, they just kept pushing the envelope. And it was like, all right, we'll go full in on abortion. And then we'll go full in on the gay lesbian issue. We'll go full in on the transgender issue. They just kept moving further and further and further. And finally, I think Americans on both sides of the aisle have woken up and said, okay, why are we allowing men to play in women's sports and enter female-only spaces? And, why are we pushing such a radical agenda of saying, educators know better than parents and schools and school boards make these decisions for kids? I mean, just the level of just ludicrocy, really, that the left has gone to, that the radical left has gone to where I think many classic liberals are looking at their party saying, I don't recognize these values anymore. I identify much, much more with the values of conservatives. And so we're seeing this shift. And honestly, speaking as a millennial, I'm really encouraged by Gen Z. I'm encouraged by this shift. And I think that the younger generation really has an opportunity in so many ways to be a part of kind of the bringing of the United States back to what it once was, and to elevating our values, to elevating patriotism, and reminding all Americans of, hey, what our nation was founded on, and we need to preserve those values because they matter, and because really the very future of our country depends on preserving those values.
You're absolutely right. A point well taken. And let's talk about the debate over education and parental rights. It continues to be a major issue at the state and local level. What are the most significant legislative battles that you're seeing across the country as we head into this new school year, which is about to start any minute?
Yeah, well, it continues to be, I think, one of transparency for any parent who's sending their child to a school. Make sure you know what that public school's policy is, or even private school for that matter, and what the state policy is related to transgenderism. I just reported on a story out of Rhode Island where Rhode Island has a policy that has allowed schools to create their own policies that say if a child comes to us, they say, I don't feel comfortable sharing with my parent that I identify as the opposite sex. Well, that school can completely keep that information hidden from the parent and transition that child. So those are the types of policies that parents need to be aware of, that need to know about, and really consider, okay, am I even though you might be having great interactions with the school administration and with your child's teacher, behind the scenes, it could be a very, very different story. And so that element of transparency is something parents need to keep really demanding, not only asking for, but truly demanding.
Yeah, and I think too often your natural inclination is to be, trusting of the school environment, of teachers, of educators, and people that work with children. But you have to remain vigilant, and you have to be present and involved and actually paying attention to what's happening in the classroom, paying attention to what their teachers are saying. I mean, it's like, my son goes to, now he graduated from a very good school, but there was one teacher in there, a history, and saying all kinds of crazy things. And I was like, is this a joke? And then his friends sat down, they're like, yeah, this is what's happening. They're saying this in the classroom and saying this, President Trump, and did President Trump, did he take out the queen? And this is like a fake queen. It was so crazy. It was so crazy. I was like, what is happening here? You just never know.
That's insane. Well, and you wish that those wish that it was all, just made up. And, some of it you just look at and it's like, oh my goodness, how did we get to this point? But I think it's gotten, Trump derangements is a real thing.
It really is. We joke about it, but it's actually real.
It's real.
And there's no antibiotic for it. I don't even know. It's just, it's like a permanent illness. All right, let's talk about something else that we always have to keep a focus on from a national security perspective for our America First agenda. Let's turn to China. There has been a lot of focus on their military ambitions, but what about their economic and cultural influence inside the United States, especially inside our schools, inside our colleges? And, what is the most underreported story right now regarding the Chinese Communist Party's reach into American institutions?
I think it really is at that university level. This is slowly being uncovered. Increasingly, the lid is being pulled back to understand that for Chinese students who come to America, that they actually have an obligation, not even because they want to, but because they have no choice for their own safety, the safety of their family. They have no choice but to share information with the CCP. And that is maybe, there was, Stanford did a great report on this, and they said, look, we're not at all racist. We're not trying to call out Chinese students. This is just the reality that they're living under. And the American people need to be aware of this. And you think, okay, if it's happening at some of these, big universities across the country, it's probably happening at all of them. And so this is something that I think in the coming years we're going to continue to see increased reporting on, and it's a good thing to just expose, hey, this is the reality. And I mean, you really feel in so many ways also for those students that don't have a choice. And then there's also elements that are not as hidden, where you have whole institutes, Chinese institutes that are on these college campuses that are really strategically recruiting American students to even be informants for the CCP and kind of to sway them. And we're going to just continue, I think, to see a light on this. And this is something that President Trump has been very, very honest about, that he sees China as such a great threat to the U.S. And I actually have a story coming out later today on the element of China's falling birth rate, and that you're seeing a lot of people say, okay, that could really harm China's economy because they have this falling birth rate. But I've spoken with multiple experts that say, don't underestimate China. Don't underestimate their ability to turn around and use AI to fill jobs that are vacated. They are playing the long game here, and the United States cannot keep its eye off the ball, because at the end of the day, everyone knows what China wants. They want to be the next global world power, specifically on that economic front.
No, you're right about that. Trust me, don't ever underestimate them. And that's why we have to battle back, every day against Chinese influence and penetration into our cultural institutions, our educational institutions, in this country. It is imperative that we remain very steadfast and vigilant on this issue. And I know that is a big focus of the Trump administration and the president personally. I want to talk to you a little bit, as a reporter for a non-legacy news outlet. How do you see the media landscape evolving in 2025 and beyond? We've seen some positive signs thus far. Is the public's trust in sort of traditional news sources continuing to decline? And what role can outlets like the Daily Signal and the important work that you guys do over there, play in filling that void? What is your guys' game plan here?
Yeah, I think we're already seeing it unfolding, and the Trump administration has obviously done a great job of elevating the voices of these newer conservative media outlets, these smaller conservative media outlets like the Daily Signal and Town Hall and Breitbart, so many great news outlets that are just really taking time to do critical investigative work, to report honestly, to report what we're seeing, and to be a voice for the American people. And I think, there's been such a shift away from cable news in so many ways. I mean, there's still, a good portion of Americans that enjoy cable news. But Kimberly, they're turning to podcasts. They're turning to Rumble. They're turning to these other outlets because so many of us are getting our news on the go. We're listening to it in the car, and we're scrolling through X. And so the more and more, I think, the American people have options. I think they're loving just all of these small, great news outlets that are kind of scrappy but powerful, and that are breaking these news stories because they recognize, hey, there's not the same bias that you get with these major legacy outlets, that sometimes what they report on and how they report on it is very much so dictated to them from the top. And with smaller outlets, there's much more freedom, I think, and a lot more room for just that really grassroots reporting that the American people crave.
Yeah, that authenticity, and people really do crave it. They don't want somebody who's being controlled by a newsroom that's being controlled, by the marketing arm of the DNC. They want actual facts, smart reporting, investigative journalism. And that's why I think places like the Daily Signal, Rumble, are thriving in so many ways. And people really are going because their trust and their beliefs are being rewarded because they get this great information. They see that it's actually, factual and accurate. And so they continue to go to those places. And I love all the articles and great reporters that you guys have over at the Daily Signal for sure. As you know, I feature you all regularly on this program. We've also seen this trend unfold inside the briefing room. Would you suggest that this is perhaps a blueprint for a new era of Washington journalism?
Well, I certainly hope so. I certainly hope it's something that, regardless of whether our next president is a Republican or a Democrat, that they carry on, of a recognition of there need to be a lot of voices in that room. That's actually a benefit to everyone. A rising tide lifts all boats, as they say.
Yes.
And so the more voices and the more perspectives you have in that briefing room asking critical questions, that creates greater accountability, and it sheds light on issues that maybe the American people wouldn't otherwise have been aware of. So it's been encouraging to watch, just, man, in such a short time. And you think back to the Biden administration and what the briefing room was like under President Biden, and how vastly different it is now. And just the level of not only voices and various voices, but also just kind of renewed energy that we're seeing out of that briefing room. As also there's just a lot more news to report on these days.
Sure. No, you're absolutely right. You brought up a good point. It's interesting because they've made this commitment now in the briefing room and expanding it to non-legacy journalists, non-traditional podcasts and news coverage. It's going to be very interesting if they try to censor speech and undo, if it was a Democrat president, the changes that the president has made to be inclusive and to have more variety, different, viewpoints, different type of, communication mediums in the briefing room, which I think is a benefit for everyone, and certainly for the American people, to be able to have a wide selection, a wide array, of outlets to get their news from.
I know it certainly is. I think it'll be interesting to see, okay, in the future, the next time there's a Democrat president, are they going to try and take a similar approach with, smaller left-leaning news outlets? And quite frankly, there's not as many smaller left-leaning outlets because they just sort of have the establishment media as their turf. And so there's so many small conservative outlets, as we've recognized, okay, we have to have a place and a space to be able to write and express views. But I think it'll be fascinating to see if, like you said, if this becomes a blueprint. And I would estimate that it will be, because I think the response has been so positive across America. They like seeing all of these various outlets and diverse backgrounds and views and opinions represented, just like the American people are so diverse.
Well, looking ahead to the fall, what do you predict will be the dominant news story that will capture the nation's attention? And why would you believe it? Yeah.
Well, we're not going to see Russiagate going away. That's for sure. That is going to be a story
That's true.
that continues to unfold. No doubt, border and immigration is going to remain a top priority. As you mentioned, it's one that the American people are continuing to back the president. They like what they're seeing. The vast majority of Americans support the arrest and deportation of criminal and illegal aliens. That issue is going to continue to be on the forefront. And then on the foreign policy front, we're going to, I think, really continue to see a lot as it relates to the Middle East. There's some really big things obviously happening between Hamas, Israel, how that is going to play out. And we continue to pray that we see the rest of those hostages come home before the end of this year.
Yeah.
But that's certainly a situation that we're going to continue to watch and see.
Okay, and you guys will be doing additional reporting on that as well.
Certainly. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, let's see. What can we do to help promote you, Daily Signal? Where can people find you, read your great articles, all of the above?
You are so kind. Well, you can follow all of my work and the work of my colleagues at dailysignal.com, dailysignal.com. You can find everything there. We're also across all social media platforms, whether you like getting your news on YouTube or X or Instagram, True Social, wherever you like to get it. We're on Rumble. You can watch all of our content there as well. And then you can also listen to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, whether on a streaming video platform or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can find Problematic Women and the Daily Signal podcast.
So fun. So good. You're such a smart and talented young woman. So we love to have you on the program. Very proud of your success and intelligence. Virginia Allen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
All right. Be well. Thank you so much for joining us today on this important episode. Please be sure to download the Rumble app, subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, like and share, and tell all your friends so they know exactly where to find us. And please also be sure to follow me across all platforms: X, Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Stay tuned to Rumble for all the very latest breaking news coverage. Don't miss Don Jr.'s big show at 6 p.m. Eastern. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'm looking